And if you like the video or any other content on the channel, feel free to subscribe. Shield Host Overview Post-June 2024 Data Slate. This video is going over the entire Shield Host Detachment, giving my thoughts on what has changed with the June 2024 Data Slate to increase the power of the Adeptus Custodes Shield Host Detachment. This video goes over the detachment ability, enhancements, stratagems of the Shield Host, the general game plan, strength, and how to use each of these stratagems and enhancements, followed by 4 units I think will make a great place to start when building a casual or competitive list for the Shield Host. We'll quickly touch on the army rule martial kata, so each time a unit from your army with this ability is selected to fight, select one of the kata stances until that unit has finished making its attacks. The selected stance is active for it and it gains the relevant ability. Dakatari stance, you get sustained hits 1, or the Rendak stance where you get the lethal hits ability. Next, we actually have the detachment rule for the Shield Host, and it is called Martial Mastery. At the start of the battle round, you can select one of the bullet points below. If you do so until the start of the next battle round, that bullet point effects apply. So you can either pick each Adeptus Custodes model with the Martial Kata ability, melee weapons equipped by that model gain the critical hits on 5 ability. Or you could pick each Adeptus Custodes model with the Martial Kata ability, melee weapons equipped by that model gain the +1 to AP. I love this change so much, even more so with hands-on experience. Not only does this make us a threat every round instead of just for one battle round, we also have to put some actual thought into which of these 2 we select. Crit hits on 5s is nice, but if it's something tough like a Land Raider or a Knight with no invulnerable save, maybe we select an extra AP instead to get most of our melee weapons up to AP 3, damage 2. Lots of invulnerable, we go crits on 5s instead. Having a good knowledge of the opponent's army, which units we actually may reach in combat this turn, what units will the opponent use in the fight phase on their turn. Since Martial Mastery lasts until our next command phase, we need to be mindful of what the opponents might charge into us in their turn. And it does make it feel like one single Custodes model is a credible threat to most units in the game, which does feel very lore friendly. Now we'll touch on the Shield Host enhancements. We have from the Hall of Armories, and this is Shield Captain only, add 1 to the strength and damage characteristics of the bearer's melee weapons. Then we have Castellan's Mark, and this is Shield Captain model only as well. After both players have deployed their armies, you can select up to 2 Adeptus Custodes units from your army, excluding Psychona units, and redeploy all those units. When doing so, any of those units can be placed into strategic reserve, regardless of how many units are already in strategic reserves. From the Hall of Armories, any of our shield captains will love the +1 to strength and damage in this melee heavy detachment. I like this especially on a shield captain in Alaris with the Castellan Axe, making it 6 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 10, AP 1, damage 4. We can also add the extra AP with the Martial Mastery or the crits on 5 to make this a threat the opponent has to worry about. And then Castellan's Mark, this used to be great, but now that it is before the first turn roll, we are usually a lot of smaller units behind ruins and cover already, so we do not really need a reposition before the first turn roll off. We can no longer reposition the Cladius Grav Tanks or the Blade Champions for turn 1 Alpha Strike if we get the first turn roll. This has lost a lot of its power, opening up room for the other enhancements. The last 2 enhancements for the Shield Host Detachment, we have Auric Mantle, and this can be on a Shield Captain or a Blade Champion model. Add 2 to the bear's wound characteristics. And then we have Panopta specs, and this is the same. It could be on a Shield Captain or a Blade Champion. While the bearer is leading a unit, ranged weapons equipped by models in that unit have the Ignores cover ability. Auric Mantle, I see this as a points filler, nothing more. 2 extra wounds on a character is nice, but does not change how the model or the unit operates on the tabletop. Then we have Panopta specs, and this is a fantastic and very useful enhancement on a shield captain in Alaris, leading a big unit of Alaris Terminators. Both the axe and the spear and the ballistic grenade launchers are AP 1 in shooting, making ignore cover for the unit very powerful against light infantry or horde units. On anything else, it's just a points filler. No other unit has the pure shots output of the Alaris, paired with the Slayer of Tyrants ability to give reroll wounds against any of those infantry or horde units if they have a character attached to that unit as well. Now let's move on to the Shield Host Stratagems. We'll start with Arcane Genetic Alchemy for 1 CP, and is a battle tactic. Any phase just after a mortal wound has been allocated to an Adeptus Custodes model from your army, excluding Psychona models. Target is the Adeptus Custodes models unit. Until the end of the phase, models in your unit have the 4-up Feel No Pain ability against mortal wounds. This is the only way in the detachment to mitigate mortal or devastating wounds. Luckily, this stratagem lets us wait to see how many mortal wounds that have been allocated to our unit before we use this stratagem, making it much better than if it was before the mortal wounds were allocated. We would have to use it or take our chances of being attacked by some potential mortal wounds attacks, making it a lot easier for our opponent to play around. The opponent cannot bait this stratagem out of us. We get to use it when we want to every time. The change to the Shield Captain's Strategic Mastery allows us to use Arcane Genetic Alchemy for 0 CP once per battle round, which is handy to have since this can be used in any phase. The any phase and waiting until mortal wounds have been allocated for the 1 CP is what makes this such a powerful stratagem. Next we have Archaeotech Munitions, and this is 1 CP in your shooting phase. The target is 1 Adeptus Custodes unit from your army, excluding Psychona units that have not been selected to shoot this phase. The effect is select either the lethal hits or the sustained 1 ability. Until the end of the phase, ranged weapons equipped by models in your unit have the selected ability. The target of this stratagem is Adeptus Custodes unit, meaning we could use this stratagem on a Venerable Land Raider, or even better, the Caladius Grav Tank, giving it sustained 1s with lethal hits against monsters and vehicles. Twin Link, another good target for this stratagem would be Carydraxis with her Custodian Guard unit. We could pick sustained 1 when shooting into infantry. Her psychic attack is already sustained 2, so it wouldn't benefit from sustained 1. This would be good to try and get the sustained 1 on the anti-infantry 4 devastating wounds gun she has along with those psychic attacks. Another unit to keep in mind for this stratagem is the Alaris Shield Captain, with 5 or 6 Alaris Terminators attached to it. They have a bunch of shots with the 2 shots from the Guardian Spear or the Castellan Axe or the D6 plus blast grenade launchers. Shooting into a large horde unit, the Alaris would love sustained hits 1 with their ranged weapons. The next stratagem is probably the weakest in my opinion. It is called Avenge the Fallen, 1 CP, and the start of the fight phase. The target is 1 Adeptus Custodes unit from your army, excluding Psychona units that is below starting strength. The effect is until the end of the phase, add 1 to the attack characteristic of melee weapons equipped by models in your unit. If your unit is below half strength until the end of the phase, add 2 to the attack characteristic of those melee weapons instead. As it was an index, this is a very situational stratagem. Even with the detachment not having a pile of really good stratagems, I still would only use this if I really needed to make a game-winning unit kill. For 1 CP, there are plenty of other better stratagems to spend the CP on. And here is one of our more powerful stratagems, Multi-Potentiality. For 1 CP, your movement phase, the target is 1 Adeptus Custodes unit from your army that has fell back this phase. Effect, until the end of your turn, that unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. This is an amazing stratagem to have with an army that hits so hard in melee. We do not have to worry about an important unit being tied down for long by our opponent's melee units. We can fall back, shoot, and then charge back in or at a different target altogether. Very useful when an enemy has charged into us on their turn. Instead of the opponents getting to activate first in the ongoing combat, we can fall back and re-engage for fights first to ensure we get to activate before the opponent in our turn. This is another 1 CP stratagem, making this an easy choice to use in our turn if we have an important unit we want to be able to fall back, shoot, and charge with. Alaris Custodians love this stratagem since they have both potent shooting and very deadly melee. The next stratagem is Unwavering Sentinels, and this is for 1 CP in the fight phase just after an enemy has selected its targets. 1 Adeptus Custodes infantry unit from your army, excluding Psychona units that are within a range of an objective marker you control, was selected as the target of 1 or more of those attacking units. Effect is until the end of the phase, each time a melee attack targets a unit, subtract 1 from the hit roll. Those familiar with 10th Index Custodes before the Codex, this stratagem gave us fights first on the unit if we controlled the objective. This is a far cry from that stratagem. We can use it to help mitigate some damage in the fight phase though. The fact that we have to control the objective to use this is something the opponent can play and will play around. With the amount of reroll the hit rolls in the game, this is not as good if it were -1 to the wound roll. I don't want to be too negative about the change. This can be and will be used a lot in our games. It just does not have the stratagem strength and cool factor of, say, multi-potentiality or archaeotech munitions. This is just -1 to the hit roll, if you control the objective. And the last stratagem in the Shield Host Detachment is called Vigilance Eternal, and this is also 1 CP, your movement phase, 1 Adeptus Custodes battle line unit from your army within range of an objective marker you control. That objective marker remains under your control even if you have no models within range of it until your opponent controls it at the start or end of any turn. The devastating wounds change along with this stratagem, Arcane Genetic Alchemy, and the Pariah Nexus pushing for a bit more battle line units. Custodian Guard have a place in this detachment. They are the only unit we have access to that can use this stratagem. We can use this to keep our army aggressive. If the opponent has no reserve units left or in-game redeploys like Golden Light or something like that, this stratagem can be used to keep our army in the opponent's face. Nothing's worse than a full unit of Custodian Wardens being ignored and then doing nothing all game, all because they need to stand on the objective for primary points, leading to an eventual loss. Now we can use the Custodian Guard to sticky objectives, allowing us to use more of our assets during a game. And this will make the enemy have to physically come take the objective, which could be exactly what we wanted. More on that in our top unit section. So now with the overview of the actual detachment strategies enhancements, I'll give you a couple units that I do believe will make a great basis to building a Shield Host detachment list. Starting off, we have a Blade Champion. This is not a very CP intensive detachment. Having a shield captain is nice, but is not nearly as useful as, say, Talons of the Emperor or Orc champions, mostly from the fact that the stratagems just are not as useful and powerful as Talons of the Emperor. The Blade Champion is a monster with crits on 5s. For more hits and chances to get the devastating wounds in the wound roll, an extra AP can bring that same weapon profile up to AP 4, damage 3. Then we have the Custodian Wardens. These units are the backbone to our primary scoring and the overall toughness of our army. The trade-off of less potent melee is no more in this detachment. Yes, they are still not as potent as a Custodian Guard or a Laris in this detachment. They are, however, much more lethal in this detachment than ever before. I still want to compare them to the Orc Champions Wardens. The once per game 4-up Funeral Pain and access to in any phase 4-up Funeral Pain to mortal wounds paired with the Martial Mastery makes this unit a nightmare to get off objectives. Then we have our Custodian Guard. Having access to Kyria Draxus is a huge bonus, but in Pariah Nexus and the Vigilance Eternal stratagem, I feel at least one Custodian Guard is auto-included with or without Draxus. They hit like trucks if they are on an objective they control, can stick an objective in the movement phase for 1 CP, with some protection from mortal wounds from the Arcane Genetic Alchemy, incredibly deadly to infantry in the shooting phase when paired with Kyria Draxus, and those two data sheets pair for an incredible combination. Custodian Guard, Kyria Draxus, put them together, watch everything melt. And for the last unit that I'm going to recommend, Venatari. You all knew it was coming. This is the most improved unit from the data slate, a huge 35 points drop for a unit of 3. These are incredible. A unit of 6 will have 30 attacks, hitting on 2s, strength 7, AP 2, damage 2 with Lance. Throw crits on 5s or an extra AP, not much will survive getting hit by that. I will just avoid them, you say. Well, they can rapid ingress for free as well as double up. Since the ability states rapid ingress as the stratagem that we can use for 0 CP, we can also use this multiple times per turn too, as of the data slate. They have a movement of 10, fly with infantry keyword. They can rapid ingress in safe positions to easily move into charged positions in our following turn. I'll just tie them up with something I know won't die. Well, once again, the Venatari got us covered, with an all-game fallback and charge as their second ability on the data sheet. Needless to say, at either 165 points for 3 or 330 for a unit of 6, they are well worth the points price. Now we will be seeing them in almost every list for every detachment, probably catching a points nerf in the next update. Really is a shame that they did not make a plastic Venatari kit instead of that shield captain with the shield and the Pyrothite spear. I would have much rathered a plastic Venatari kit, especially now with the Venatari so good. They are Forge World, they're hard to get, expensive to get. They just would have been nice with the points buff stuff that if we got a plastic version. But can't complain forever. We got what we got. And so those are my 4 units that I do believe make a great start to building a list for the Shield Host, and you could probably fill your whole army with these units and do quite well. Alright, so let's finish with some final thoughts. I've yet to play the new Orc champions other than solo test matches, but I feel the Shield Host might be the strongest detachment. If not, it has easily become the most fun detachment. With the detachment rule, we can use almost any of our melee focused units and have a fun game. Lots of room for list variation. I have 2 list videos coming out on the channel shortly. I like to name them just to have a little bit of flavor. First one I have is called Warden's Law, and the second is on Golden Wings. And like I said with the units, I find this detachment is not as CP heavy and CP dependent, so we don't need a shield captain as much. They are still very handy for using Interrupt for 1 CP or Heroic Intervene for 0 CP. So yes, they're still viable, but I think that they can be skipped in this detachment. So stay tuned for more Custodian content, along with a new faction to the channel I'm going to be covering. Thanks for watching, thanks for stopping by.